Ahoy there folks, I'm Captain Benzie and welcome to another video for Eve Echoes. Today's video is going to be an opinion piece. This is a topic I've talked about at length in previous videos, or not so much at length in fairness. I've kind of talked about it briefly in previous videos, but I think now is the time for me to actually sit down and talk about this to its fullest. I want some thoughts and opinions on this, so I feel that this topic requires its own comment section for you guys to get involved and add your own thoughts and opinions to this. Now, of course, this is based on my own personal ideas, but these are ideas that I've bounced around Catskull and numerous other people I speak to a lot in Eve Echoes, and it's kind of a consensus that this could be a good way forward. You've already seen the title and thumbnail for this video. We are of course talking about covert ops ships, covert ops cloaks, and the possibility of a need for skills into them, and I'm going to make my case as to why I think this should be a thing in Eve Echoes. Now, the first question you may be asking is why on earth am I flying a Caracal 2 for the video on Covert Ops? This isn't a ship that is Covert Ops. We'll get to that in just a moment. Hopefully, that's hooked you enough. If you do enjoy this video, please let me know, hit like on it, subscribe to the channel, and if you do want to go the extra mile to help keep supporting this channel, you can do so by heading to patreon.com/Captain Benzie. It's written at the bottom right of the screen currently. Every pledge, every dollar really does help keep me doing what I'm doing on this channel. It means the world to me. While you're down there hitting like as well, I would love to know your thoughts and opinions on everything that I raise in this video. Please, let's open a discourse and talk about things. Right, so the Caracal 2, why have I got this on screen in a Covert Ops video? We'll get to that. Let's look at this ship, how I fit it, and how it works out statistically. So, here we have the Caracal 2. You can see I've got 5 medium torpedo launches in the top slots here. These are all Pitham C types, just to prove that I'm not doing any doohickery here. And the rest of the fitting, well, you can kind of see it here. If I go into the rigs, warhead califaction, and a bay loading accelerator, I've gone for max DPS. We also have a purple nano core here, currently giving me 16.8% missile and torpedo damage. I haven't bothered to upgrade it any further, just that 16.8% damage. Now, with that in total, we have a ship giving 973 DPS, with a maximum range here of 14.47 kilometers. It's fairly tanky, 20,860, 7,500 of that in the shield hit points. Its current signature radius is 89 meters, with a navigation cold of 413.10. Okay, so with those statistics in mind, this is the Caracal 2, right? Let's jump into my hangar, and I'm going to scroll down now and find the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops, which is another ship at tech level 10 that uses missiles, or at least gets bonuses for missiles. So let's load into the fitting of this one and take a look. So, you can see that with a blue nano core here, which if I go into is 15.6 missile torpedo damage here, I'm currently sitting at 972.79 DPS with a range of 44.94 kilometers. I've got 4 times the range of the Caracal 2 for the same DPS. That's already slightly worrying, right? Because we've got a blue nano core compared to a purple. Okay, sure. You can then turn around and say, yeah, sure, but okay, Benzie, but the Caracal 2 is a hell of a lot tankier than the Bellicose. And I would say, well, hang on, is it really? Because we're now sitting at 22,693, not as much of it in shield, admittedly, 7,034, rather than around about 7,500, but the overall HP is about the same of this. Where things get really crazy is that the targeting is only 52 meters here for a signature radius, navigation is the same, but of course the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops also gets a couple of bonuses. First of all, warp drive signature radius penalty there, 50% reduction to the signature radius penalty when using a micro warp drive. That means when I activate this, I'm going to get a 557% speed increase for a cost of only 207% signature radius adjustment. Now that means that by time you've activated the micro warp drive, the signature radius here is only going to be a little bit bigger than the Caracal 2, but the flight velocity is going to be significantly higher, which means that this actually speed tanks remarkably well using a micro warp drive. That bonus to the flight velocity outweighs the cost to your signature radius. And then we've got the same DPS, but over literally 4 times the, times 4 the total distance. It was 15, and here we've got 44. Is that 4 times, 3 times, whichever. The math is still pretty impressive there, that the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops can do this from massive range, and it's doing the same DPS that the Caracal 2 would up close and personal as a brawler, despite the fact that ultimately, yeah, when it comes down to it, the Caracal 2 is, it's going to have those negatives to it. The fit's very similar. I have gone for 2 bay loading accelerators here, but anyone who can access the Sweet Fitting app will tell you that doesn't actually drop it all that much, and it probably only makes up for the fact that I'm using a blue nano core rather than a purple one. So, Benzie, you've been blathering on about the Caracal 2 and the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops for a few minutes now. What are you getting at here? Well, the main question is, why on earth would I ever fly a Caracal 2 over a Bellicose 3 Covert Ops? Because if I decided that actually I really wanted to do the up-close and personal brawling build with torpedoes, the DPS is going to be even higher on this one. It's going to massively outperform the Caracal 2. Yeah, but the Caracal 2's tankier. No, it's not. It's got bigger numbers, sort of. Does it even really? Like, I guess when you activate the shield hardeners that are on the Caracal 2, yeah, it kind of gets that, and it's using a large shield booster. That does make it tankier, but the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops isn't getting hit in the first place, so survivability is about equal on them. Or is it? I actually think the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops is probably more survivable in the long term than the Caracal, because you can keep applying DPS at further range, and you can get in and out of that range significantly easier, courtesy of that micro warp drive. So, is this a problem? Inherently, no, it's not, but we can then add on the fact that the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops also gets bonuses to having a Covert Ops Cloak. If we were to have a look at things here, we can fit the Covert Ops cloaking devices, and there's a 50% reduction to the lock delay when you drop, giving you, I think it's only 4 or 8 seconds to lock on with the Covert Ops cloaking device, and you've got a decent enough scan resolution to, ultimately, you can, like, cloak right up to someone, drop the cloak, lock on, scram them, and then just blow them up, whereas the Caracal 2, you don't have that sneakiness inherent with it. Now, this isn't necessarily a problem in and of itself. The problem comes in the fact that by training, say, all the cruiser skills to 554 and all the missile skills to 554, plus then all the usual sort of sideline skills like advanced micro warp drive and things like E-War and stuff, if you are basically kitted out as a cruiser pilot and you've got 554 in every single cruiser skill, the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops is just flat out better than the Caracal 2. And I challenge anyone in the comment section to tell me why the Caracal 2 is better. What situation is the Caracal 2 better than the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops, assuming that they're doing the same thing? So if someone says, oh, the Caracal 2 can, hit frigates better with rapids, I would say, okay, we'll swap the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops to rapids, and it can do that just as well. I can't see a reason why you would ever fly the Caracal 2 over the Bellicose 3 Covert Ops, and that's because there is no choice in the skill tree on which one of these to fly. That's the point of this video, and it's only taken me 8 minutes and 20 seconds to get this far. Basically, those 3 ever so controversial words in EVE Online, there are Covert Ops skills. If you want to be using a Covert Ops Cloak, you need to have been skilled into the Covert Ops skill. Ultimately, that means that if, for example, you're flying, say, a probe and doing some exploration, something obviously I'm quite big on in EVE Online, or if you're flying, say, a Condor and enjoying using missiles on small ships, then you decide one day you want to fly something like a Cheetah or a Buzzard for exploration. You don't just need to have Omega active, you don't just need to have the frigate skill, Minmatar frigate or Caldari frigate up to 5, you also need to have activated and trained up the Covert Ops skills. Now, you need those skills, first of all, to actually ever be able to fit a Covert Ops cloaking device anyway, but also to be able to actually use and undock those ships. This gives a meaningful choice. This means that something like the Caracal 2 would exist as a basic cruiser. If you've got someone who has just got all the standard cruiser skills and then has decided they want medium missiles and medium drones and medium lasers, they're going to be able to fly things like, say, the Phantasm or the Healer or the Bellicose or the Caracal or the Vexor, stuff like that. But if you want to fly a Covert Ops Bellicose, you're gonna need to have trained up a Covert Ops skill as well. This gives variety in the ship tree. Ultimately, right now there is very little variety in the skill tree. Sorry, not the ship tree, the skill tree. There's very little variety going on with that skill tree. If I, as a medium missile pilot, look at someone else who has medium missile skills, chances are we're pretty much the same. We're going to have a cruiser command at 554. We're probably going to have afterburner and micro warp drive at 554. We're probably going to have shield operation at 554 and shield hardening at 554. We're probably going to have cruiser defense upgrade at 554 if I could be bothered to actually train it. There's so many other things I want to get going on that one. Under electronics, we're going to have cruiser engineering 554, maybe even battle cruiser engineering 554 for the additional power grid reduction to medium weapons. We're going to have things like electronic warfare, targeting. All of these are going to be leveled up to probably about the same thing, but we're all going to be flying that same ship as well. If you add a skill that says, hey, if you want to use a covert ops ship, you're going to need to skill into this, then suddenly people have to think about where their skill points go that little bit more. And you might be thinking, oh, but Benzie, that means I've got to think about this game. I've got to make decisions. Well, yes, that's the entire point of a skill tree. If you didn't have to make these decisions, why bother having a time delay on your skills? Why not just say to people, here's 555 in everything, right? The point is you're supposed to be making meaningful decisions about where to put your skill points in order to achieve the goals you want. And right now, there is no difference between a Caracal 2 pilot and a Bellicose 3 Covert Ops pilot. There's no difference between an Arbitrator 3 Covert Ops pilot and a Vexor 2 pilot, other than the fact that people who are flying the Vexor and the Caracal probably aren't, you have to stop and ask why they're doing that. Because those ships just aren't as good. They require the exact same skill point investment, but they're not as good as their Covert Ops variant. I have no problem with the Covert Ops variants being more powerful, but they should require more of a skill investment. You should actually have to have some kind of Covert Ops skill. Now, how would this work? Now, in my opinion, I'm a bit of a hardliner on this. If I open up my hangar just to explain here and have a look through it, you'll notice that there are a lot of ships in here that use Covert Ops Cloaks. Right at the top, we've got some stealth bombers. If I scroll down a little bit further past the stealth bombers, you'll see lots of exploration frigates. I've got 2 Covert Ops probes docked here. There are some others around. I have scattered around the place. There's some more. There's a Nemesis there. There's an Imicus Covert Ops there. If we keep going down, there's the Astero. I love Covert Ops ships, right? Covert Ops are what I fly, and then once we hit cruisers, oh look, there's the Blackbird 3 Covert Ops, there's the Bellicose 2 Covert Ops, the Arbitrator 3 Covert Ops, Celestis 2 Covert Ops, then we've got the Astero a little bit further on. I love my Covert Ops ships. Covert Ops is probably what I would describe myself as a pilot. I'm not really a PvE pilot or I'm an explorer. I do a little bit of PvE. I'm not much of a PvP pilot. I enjoy flying ships that use Covert Ops. Heck, we even have the freaking Wreath 2 here, which is a Covert Ops cloaking ship. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? I would be happy to have a skill that I had to train up to a certain level in order to be able to use Covert Ops Cloaks. And I do honestly think that this should be a cloaking skill that is... It's not just a case of, oh, you get it to basic 1 and you unlock Covert Ops Cloaks. No, I genuinely think that you should have to get basic to at least 4, and then advanced 1 would unlock Covert Ops Cloak. And yes, I'm aware that that's putting Covert Ops Cloaks behind Omega. It's a tricky one. Put it on basic 5. Put it on basic 5, so at least there's a decent skill point investment required to even be able to use Covert Ops Cloaks. Then have them use more power grid than they currently do. Have the locking delay be longer than it is now, and then have a Covert Ops cloak skill, that once it starts hitting advance, or even at basic, it starts to reduce the amount of power grid required to fit these things. It starts to reduce the time between dropping the cloak and locking, that lock delay, down until, say, Expert 5. At Expert 5, it's the same time as you currently get on a Covert Ops cloak. Nerf the Covert Ops Cloaks, then put in a skill that brings them back into the current position we have. That suddenly means that people who want to fly Covert Ops Cloaks need to skill into these things. It's also where we talk about the cloaking stability. Now, I know people tell me, oh, that's not how it works in EVE Online. I know. I'm talking about the fact that there is a destabilization effect in EVE Online that I want to take a step further in EVE Echoes. And that's that if you have a cloak on your ship and you're cloaked for 10 minutes, you can suddenly be scanned until you drop that cloak and recloak. And yeah, it's a minor thing, but it stops people doing these big, like, you know, shove a stealth bomber or a covert ops frigate somewhere in a system, Covert Ops Cloak it so that no one can find it, keep it logged in 24/7 and have it record to Discord as some kind of, basically, CCTV camera system. I don't think that that should be an uncounterable issue like it currently is, but equally I don't think that something that you can just pulse and would drop cloaks is a good idea either, because then suddenly you just bring one of those near a gate camp and then legitimate Covert Ops cloaking usage gets reduced and gets absolutely hammered. You don't get a, you know, if you're legitimately using a Covert Ops cloak, you're still getting punished. A Covert Ops cloak should allow you to move through gate camps, and if someone can drop your cloak instantly the second you've put it up, that's a problem. That's a big problem, and that should never be allowed to happen, in my opinion. The easiest way to do it, in my opinion, is to add skills. Skills that mean that pilots can't just create a quick alt and boom, there you go, boom, there you go. Instead, they've got to actually train it meaningfully into these skills. And even then, with the cloak active, it's going to have a, say, 10-minute timer before that ship can be scanned. That means that, yeah, if someone wants to sit in system and cloak and watch the system, as soon as that 10-minute time is up, they can drop cloak, quickly recloak again, and it's as if it's exactly the same, but it requires active participation, which is kind of the key component here for me. Covert Ops cloaking should be an active thing, and to me, that's the easiest way to solve it. Add a timer that means once this goes past a certain point, you can be scanned even though you're cloaked. You just have to drop the cloak and re-put it back up, thus being an active member. You have to have skills in order to be able to fit Covert Ops cloaks to begin with. Heck, maybe you even need the skill to be able to fit standard cloaks. I don't know, that one I feel is going a bit too far, but ultimately you can have like a skill that, as I said, nerf the Covert Ops cloaks practically into dust, and then make it so that skilling up brings it back into line with what we currently have, which means it's a meaningful choice for people to spend their skill points into being a Covert Ops pilot in order to actually deter some people from being Covert Ops pilots and pushing them into flying these otherwise useless ships. They're not useless anymore, they're the cheaper skill point investment. You don't have to spend the Covert Ops skill points in order to actually, you know, be able to get them to the point where you want them. Those are just my thoughts and opinions though, folks. I'm coming in at 18 minutes long on this video. I think I've said everything I want to say here. I'm sure there's something I've missed or not explained particularly well that'll get misconstrued in the comment section, but I am hoping that you guys will engage with me down there. Talk, have a discussion, let me know what you're thinking, if you agree with this, if you disagree with this, but please don't just give a, oh, I agree or I disagree. Let me know why. Let me know what resonates with you or what is dissonant to you, what you like, what you dislike. Let's have a civilized conversation. I can pass the information on to the developers, heck, if they're even still ever listening to me. Not entirely certain they are, but that's another topic for another video. I can at least present it to them and say, look, this solves a lot of problems, it adds more variety and spice to the game, it promotes people to use ships that otherwise they might not be looking at, and yeah, I think the bottom line as well for things like the Caracal 2 and the Vexor 2 is that we need actual cruiser content as well. Give us a cruiser level Dormant Realm, as I've talked about in other videos. And I think things could go really quite well from there, but hey, that's a lot of work, and it's not an easy thing to fix, and we can be cynical and say, oh, it's not an easy fix, therefore NetEase will never do it, or we can say it's not an easy fix, but wouldn't it be amazing if they did? And that's the way I prefer to think about this. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, folks. Otherwise, happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!